Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Mooncolony live stream. I hope you're all doing well on a Thursday today. So we're nearly there, nearly at the weekend again. They always come around so quick, but never quick enough. um, but today you can see we have Arthur back with us again, one of our lovely Mooncolony art directors. How are you doing, Arthur?
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It's always really fun to see what you guys are coming up with,
Mm,
what kind of help I could provide, and yeah, it's really nice to
yeah,
sort of to participate once again.
yeah,
Thanks
amazing.
so much.
So, as I'm sure most of you are aware, we asked for people to send in their character designs for Arthur to critique today, um, and we got quite a lot in, a lot of uh,
Yeah.
really interesting characters. But alas, we only have time for a few, so I will let Arthur kind of crack on. I don't want to take up too much time
All right.
doing the intros, so if you want to get started, then go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course, no problem. All right. So yeah, like Jaden said, like we have a ton of entries, which is great. So I tried to make a selection of like some that are already like advanced skills, some that are like more intermediary, some that are like more beginner skills, just to see how at each level how we can improve the design.
Mhm.
And when we talk about design, we talk about what makes a form or a line appealing, right? And so that's always it's very, how to say, there's a method to it. There's at least there's a few methods, a few tools we can use to sort of gauge and understand like where we are with the design and what could be better.
Mhm.
But a lot of it, of course, depends on the type of project it is, how realistic it is, how stylized you can get, how crazy you can get with the colors. So I don't know really what's going on. Like this is all, those are personal pieces. Those are maybe some fan art. I'm not sure. Some, but so you know what I mean. Like I don't have like all the sort of keys to what this is supposed to be tuned into. So
Mhm.
I'll just use sort of generic tips and tricks to sort of gauge how to improve a design in general.
Yeah.
Um, so we've had quite a lot of entries. I've selected Daniele's piece here. I'll start with this one.
Mhm.
Then we have Laurentio, which has a very nice, like already a lot of advanced skills. I feel a certain confidence with proportions and with like exaggeration. So it's going to be fun to help you out on this at this level. We have Joe. So rendering wise, it's like but more of a beginner, I assume, more like not so skills are not as solid as some other artists.
Mhm.
But we're not really talking about rendering. We're really talking about designs, and it'll be fun to see how we can improve at any level uh, our approach to creating better designs, more appealing designs.
Yeah.
Then we have Kendall, really, really awesome, really, really amazing. Again, like another sort of advanced, really cool looking piece of art, which will be fun to see, to nitpick and sort of see what could be better still.
Mhm.
And finally, we have Lilith, who also has done a very cool, already very elaborate design. And also here it'll be fun to see how we can, you know, improve it and at what
Yeah.
level, at what scale of sort of sophistication we can improve things.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get started. So let's take a look. First of all, the silhouette, right? Let's just we'll sort of zoom in progressively. But when you're stuck somewhere, when you're not quite sure what's going on with your design, start with the silhouette, the big shapes, the big forms, and what's sort of bugging you at that scale. Uh, so nothing's bugging me, but I think one thing that could be better is we like in general try to avoid like verticals. They're very still. They're very sort of they remind us of like the size of the canvas. They're not very interesting. Try to avoid. It's not too much the case, but try to avoid like right angles. Even if
Mhm.
the design you're supposed to create has right angles, try to use perspective, a certain pose, a twist and a gesture to sort of create something more dynamic. Uh, because yeah, right angles, horizontals, verticals, those are sort of appeal killers, I guess. Parallel lines are also kind of annoying. Kind of they make everything look still. So here it's interesting. It's a stocky character, a buffed muscular character, and so a lot of things are going to be thick and rounded, maybe square. So it's like the pecs are going to be I'd be tempted to make them square, but let's see how we can improve this. So first of all, the silhouette. Let's add more, diagonal. So basically all the sort of silhouette problems, I guess, can be solved with diagonals in this case, which is what I resort to anytime. Like sort of try to reinterpret your whole thing using diagonals. You have a few here that are already really cool. That's great here. Those little flaps, those little straps, really nice. Let's make the waist a little narrower because we have kind of a wide shape on the chest. Let's make the waist a little narrower. It will create a sort of divot, within the overall silhouette of the character. And then we start again with the hips. Narrow hips, usually on a strong character, it sort of accentuates, what's going on with upper body. You can then go thicker again with thighs, but narrower hips are usually kind of cool on a tough character.
Like the Dorito shape, I think is what I've heard people call it before.
Oh, nice. I like the tufts of hair like sticking out of them.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
Oh, hi Daniela. They're in the chat, so
cool.
It's nice
All
to
right.
see you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
nice to see you, man.
Yeah, this goes for everybody,
Yeah,
but if you have any questions, then do fire away.
Exactly. For sure. For the shapes, like anytime you have a shape, try to avoid anything too regular. So we have like a sort of equilateral triangle here. There's some nice diagonals to it, but let's go for something more, torn, more irregular. Anything more offset. For example, when you have a curve, try to make sure the curve peaks like away from the center. It's a tip I like. If you have like a series of lines, make sure none of them are exactly the same, like one after the other. Make sure there's a difference. Let's make his knees a little narrower. You see, I'm sort of trying to reinterpret the silhouette of this character using wide shapes, narrow shapes, wide shapes again, and always trying to resolve everything with more dynamic diagonal lines. Let's go wide again. The thing I like to do, you can always sort of soften that approach, but something I got from like working with stylized subjects like Hearthstone. It's to go with series of like straightish curves, but like instead of doing this, try to simplify things first and then subdivide as needed. Some materials are really supposed to be soft, so you're going to subdivide or already soften everything much more. But at least as a first approach, like see how you can summarize everything with just a couple strokes. Yeah, so here we are. I like what you got here. It's a bit square, it's a bit regular again as a shape. So I would use more V's and diagonals in any shape really.
Yeah, so a lot of this is coming back to what you were saying at the start, I suppose, about having those like right angles and straight edges.
Yeah.
To kind of avoid those if possible.
Exactly, yeah. And see what you can indicate with using just the silhouette as a sort of device, I guess. So for example, all the layers of the costuming, I'm trying to indicate them with just the silhouette first, and then we can sort of fill in. Unfortunately, I won't have time to like keep going much further with this one. It's sort of what I thought needed the most work was just the sort of appeal of the silhouette, because rendering wise, it's really cool. It's already pretty advanced. It's just that I thought there was a lot of horizontals and verticals and sort of those regular shapes, those sort of squarish shapes. But yeah, like You see here like the sort of leather strap. I'm trying to make it stick out of the silhouette. I like that tuft of hair here. It sticks out nicely. Flat, then a tuft of hair, then flat again, then a knuckle, then a ring that sticks out. You see all this stuff sort of helps really make the silhouette more impactful, and therefore like the whole character sort of stands out and pops out of
Mhm.
the page a little better. As you go along, try to use even like more diagonal still, and try to avoid like this sort of continuity there. I think especially with the Perfecto leather jacket, you can go more like a little crazier. Like those flaps of leather can be a bit more aggressive and fly in sort of different directions. Yeah. I would probably, you see, we have this sort of, again, like the sort of verticals within
Yeah.
the chest here. Let's make it more of a sort of diamond shape. Given the angle of view of the character, like it's sort of facing slightly away, this side is going to be flatter. Like I'm sort of trying to understand the symmetry of what I'm doing. So if I do this here, it's probably going to be flatter on that side. I'm still going to try to do something like that.
Yeah, it's a bit more subtle.
Yeah. All right. Also, just a general rule, like try to alternate when you make like when you design anything really. It's a good tip to alternate convex and concave curves, and to also vary the curvature of each line one after the other. You want to avoid like sort of Michelin Man sort of bubbliness or just like this weird like too much regularity one way or the other. For example, here on the bicep, I would create a bit more of a flat line here, and then try to resolve that curve using more aggressive lines. Same on the tricep. Yeah.
Nice.
Was there any question? I'm sorry, because I'm gonna have to quickly like sort of move on to another piece.
No, that's fine. There were no questions. They were just saying they were listening as you were going through, saying, "Okay, yeah, I understand." So,
all right,
that's awesome.
Okay, I'll save this and I'll share in the there, like just so you can see.
Yeah.
Just so everybody can get their feedback. Okay, all right. So now we're a piece where it's like sort of a notch like above in terms of overall like I guess mastery of a bunch of skills. Like rendering is there, design is already really advanced. It's really cool. It's already very appealing. So now let's see. Maybe my input is going to be more subtle, but I'm also going to be able to demonstrate like some of the solutions that could work well in the first one here.
Yeah, sure.
So as you can see, yeah, like we have a nice alternation of all kinds of curves going in different angles. Nothing's really vertical. We have kind of vertical here, but it's okay. I feel it's not really bothersome. Here we can do something, but overall it's really nice. So now let's go through it. So I see he's got a sort of like possessed arm, like a demonic arm that's sort of like creeping into his body. This looks a little too much like a flame. I think it would look better if you created more variation in terms of like the hardness of that limit. So for example, just to sort of show that it's like merging with the body of the dude.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's cool to have like some hardness here and there. It's So it creates a nice sort of focalizing little detail. Anything sharp draws the attention, and kind of a nice area to draw the attention to.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, for example, like this whole line here is overall very sharp. You could sort of choose whenever you have like a long continuous sharp line, a point where it would be interesting to soften it. So I think in this case, many solutions can be right, but I'm just gonna choose one. It's okay to go back later and maybe, in the light of other changes, maybe you change your mind. But at least that's something. Let's try something else, maybe on the other side. Yeah, something like this. For the design of these eyes, same thing. Like I feel they're a bit like sharp all over. Let's and also not super like they're integrated in the design. Like we can see there's like pupils and not pupils. I want to say eyelids. Yeah, eyelids and kind of the eyeball itself. And so it's sort of there's a nice transitional area already between the eye itself and the arm, so we can sort of sense the connection. But I think with this sort of thing, without going too detailed, it would be cool to be a little more purposeful and spend a little extra time really indicating properly as we can, like those details.
Yeah.
We're not going to add more necessarily, more indications. We'll just work with what you've done already, but just trying to push things around. Like same thing using the same, like alternating softer and harder lines to create something a bit more gradual, a bit more voluminous. That curve of the eye could also be a little more regular. Like overall, from afar, your design I think works really well. There's a nice, for example, color contrast, saturation contrast. We have areas that are very saturated, others that I'm like not at all, white or grayish. We have also like nice value contrast, very dark areas, very bright areas, a lot of midtones. It's really nice. Also, the texture contrast is really nice. We have some areas that are obviously metallic, so we have very concentrated highlights, very sharp, concentrated, and bright highlights. The skin is on the opposite, like kind of waxy and which is more natural looking like that. I think you could go. You can indicate more textures, like for example the fabric itself, without going like actual photo texture. Like we can still stylize like this, but indicating like a few strokes that show like more folds, maybe a hint of mesh, like just the sort of threads, I guess, here and there would be cool. But yeah, overall, it's really successful. Like from afar, it's really successful, and it's just that as we sort of get closer, like looking at these like secondary shapes and the way ideas are treated is where we could sort of refine a little bit. That's fortunately like pretty easy. It just takes like references, going online and sort of taking the time. If it takes an hour, 2 hours, like your whole afternoon, really grab all the reference you can find from the best artists, like the most inspiring artists, and trying to maybe cannibalize some ideas, reinterpret them a little bit, but there's nothing wrong with it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel everywhere, or it's nice. There's a quality to it, of course, to come up with your own solutions, but you will eventually. It's just that sometimes, just for the sake of efficiency, good reference gathering, especially for those little like details that you cannot, if you don't know them, like if you don't know exactly how eyelids function, like in detail, like in those little nooks and crannies, it's better to just go with a reference.
Yeah, you can already tell that the eye is a bit more like, I don't know if defined, maybe defined is the right word.
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely see more of like the raised eyelids.
Yeah. And see how things also overlap, with a different angle, like the corners of the eyelid kind of overlap each other slightly differently.
Yeah.
Like this one here, we can sort of sharpen its edge as if it was sort of neatly overlapping that part in the back. And then, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Pronounced might be. Yeah, pronounced is probably a better word. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep. Yeah. And you can also like use lines that are a bit more dynamic here and there. Not everything has to be just perfectly like following the form of the eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doritos, diagonals, however you want to call them, like anything that sort of points in
Yeah.
anything but parallel. That's great. But yeah, that's just the detail. You see how you could treat like with a bit more anatomical reference, like you can just spend a little extra time on the areas that matter. The face is really cool. Yeah, very, very cool. What's okay, let's go here in just going back to like line work, I guess.
Sure.
I'm still seeing something that are a bit too still, too parallel. Instead of like a sort of horseshoe shape, like a sort of C curve with like a long vertical like this, I think it would be cool to try to solve it in more. Like let's try to use just 2 or 3 like lines of different size. And I'm trying to sort of purposefully like create a difference with that other side. Get the canvas to see if anything becomes more obvious. Sometimes you get used to just the way things look from a certain angle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like trying to avoid a parallel within the like that color shape, making it maybe longer.
Yeah, it's nice to sort of change up the shape at the end of that as well. Like you've kind of tapered it out a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And you see like how it's kind of this a similar kind of width. It sort of gets narrower up there, but it's overall a bit too similar. So yeah, let's also up there like try to come up with something interesting, something that curves away, like following the shape of the body.
Yeah.
It's as you design these sort of things, it's like you try to take a few variables in account at the same time. The shape of the body, how it looks as you're doing it. If it looks weird, just start over. And overall also how it gels with just the other designs. Maybe we could use, you have a lot of like those sort of sharp shapes here that are really cool, and they repeat themselves like all over the costume. So I think it'd be cool to integrate it here as well. Somehow, like no. Maybe closer to the face. Like one thing I've heard, I think it's the concept artist Bali Conine said it in like an interview or something, or a friend of mine who heard him say it told it to me. Anyway, I remember it. It's try to frame the head with a lot of like tiny details. Like if you're gonna have tiny details in your composition, in your design, try to sort of arrange them around the face or the head, so it sort of maintains the attention of the viewer around that area. Same for the hands. They are also very sort of expressive elements, the hands.
Yeah.
So having bracelets, anything, like sort of keeping that area busy, sort of the eye naturally wants to just sort of interpret all the information that's going on there and just sort of pay attention to it. So it's like a bit of sort of peacocking, like you're just sort of pointing at a thing using peripheral elements.
Mm-hmm. I want you to look here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've heard that about I don't know where I heard it, but I've definitely heard it about the bracelets and stuff before. Like you'll notice quite how many characters have like things on their wrists. How many characters have bracelets or like, I don't know, fancy sci-fi wristwatches or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. All right, so here I'm sort of making these flare a little bit, and I'm gonna do the same here, so I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not going too symmetrical within like each shape, like not going like this, but making sure the symmetry happens on the other side. Trying to see what's going on here. It's pretty cool, but I think talking about like alternating convex and concave shapes. Let's see if we can just sort of use that principle and make up something interesting. This could be good. I like how it sort of cuts neatly across the belt, so I think I'm going to keep it. Maybe this could be. Like this. Or like this and like this. And this could stick out a little more, I think. Yeah, just another sort of idea is like it's not it's not so bad, or like it doesn't look bad really, but because you're already like making it stick out a little bit. But yeah, in general, try to avoid like this sort of thing, where you have like elements just stopping neat at the edge of the bigger shape. It's always, I think, cooler. That's, I guess, a personal preference, but I always find it cooler to make a stronger statement, with this sort of thing, like. Like have those shape get out more boldly from the silhouette.
It's a bit safer that way as well, right?
Yeah. I don't even know if it's like a good design principle or anything. It's just like there's been so many times where, without paying attention to it, you just sort of create a lot of little tangents. And the client always says, yeah, be careful, there's a tangent here, there's a tangent there. So after this happening a million times, just start calling it out first. You're trying to just, weed them out, even though it's not, I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's just something that becomes ingrained in your practice.
Yeah.
Also try to avoid, oh, you were saying?
No, you go. No, you go.
Okay. I was going to say, like, you see, I almost made a mistake here. It's like these two forms are now the same size. Let's make sure it's not the case. Like, one should be neat, like, obviously, like, longer or bigger than the other. If you can, like, repeat that principle, like, further and further away from, like, a given shape, that's always good. Also, like it's not necessary, but like for example, here I'm avoiding a size of, like shapes of similar size. If you can also avoid the same size between these two, you know, like between
Right.
areas that are like away from each other, it's
Yeah.
always better too. Um, but it's not always possible. Like the more complicated the picture becomes, like it's just hard to keep track of
Yeah.
everything.
You've just dropped out for a second.
Oh, okay. Are we back?
Yes, we are now. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'm sorry, it's a real pleasure going with this one. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
let this one go. I could go on forever. I'll move on to our third one, but really, Laurent, you this stunning piece. Just try to like take reference of like artists that are even better than you and see how they sort of sum up or elaborate even like on some of those shapes and design in general. But you're in a great place. All right, so let's go now with Joe. Joe's an interesting piece. It's a knight, I guess, like a virtuous, like a knight on the like a warrior on the good side of things. Uh, I don't sense anything. Like there's sort of it's already coherent as a character. Like it's you can tell what kind of person he is. Now let's see what we can improve design wise. So a thing that we can pay attention to first and foremost is like finding a shape that works. For example, this here, like these lower leg like armors, and trying to see where we can repeat them. Because having just one of a design, even if it's mirrored, like it's really just on one part of the character. It's sort of hinted at here and here, but let's see if we can repeat it more. Because the more you repeat a sort of design trope or a sort of design element, the more you make it like normal and like it's supposed to be here. It's like purposeful. So yeah, let's see. So we have like this here. First of all, I think I'm gonna try to maybe fix it a little bit. So here's what I think is going on. Like we have the hips here, then we have the knee somewhere here. I think it would be cooler if the armor stopped here and we saw more of the joint.
Yeah.
Instead of having the armor cut just like across the joint. Like realistically, it's possible, I guess. You know, like you could just have it strapped behind like here, and so it like the knee will never like it's not like sort of strapped around the knee, but it's still I think it looks cooler if we can see the joint.
I think with greaves like that anyway, they tend to finish just below the knee anyway.
Got it. Okay. Greaves. Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, you're
Thanks for the vocabulary.
If there's one thing my hobbies have taught me, it's armor vocabulary. That's about it.
Nice. Yeah, and same thing as before. Like, let's try to simplify it. Like, sum it up with lines that are straighter and that sort of articulate more purposefully, one against the other. Like a line like this, and this, one like this. Let's try to make it work on the other side. Avoiding parallels, avoiding verticals. It's a lot to keep in mind at once, but yeah.
Sonia says nothing annoys me more than when they don't give it character or gorget. That's someone that's someone who knows their armor.
So I assume that's the thing on the throat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the upper chest.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, all right. You know what? That's a good call. Let's give him a gorget. A gorget is the name.
Yeah, yeah. I say it the English way, where it's almost definitely a French word, isn't it? It's gonna so.
Gorge sounds French, but I mean, I think it's supposed to like it's probably gorget in French, but
Yeah.
this is not. We're speaking English, and I'm okay with not being an annoyance.
I don't know.
But yeah,
A lot of armor. It's just like a lot of armor has sort of fancy names, so I just accept the fact that I'm going to butcher them. So, um,
sure. Um, but okay, so let's give this guy a gorget. Using this design, like what we came up with here, if it works on one thing with a bit of like industry, like we can make it work in other parts of the body. So let's just keep it visible. Basically, what we have is like a shape that goes like this, and then it goes like this, and then like this. So let's see if we can sort of compress it, reuse it. And so I'm gonna make it, I think the color area will be this. And I believe like to sort of stop the sword or the cut or whatever, there would be a sort of like angle between the
yeah,
color
yeah.
and
So it kind of
like it would
goes.
not slope right into the throat. That would
Yeah,
make no sense.
yeah. There's all sorts of different types.
And now let's let's see if we can. Now I'm using these shapes here.
Something that I really like about armor is the fact that it can be kind of so different. You can kind of have some fun and play around with shapes quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's really no limit, but then it depends on the sensitivity of
Of
the
course.
sensibility of the viewer, because
Yeah,
some people are very strict about like what it just if it's their hobby, like you mentioned, like
yeah,
they just cannot unsee something really outrageous.
yeah. Of course, yeah.
So I guess on this guy, like just actually make the throat actually protected would be cool, like this, and not just sort of hang loose like some cool kid. You know,
It's like the medieval
more,
equivalent of having your tie undone slightly.
yeah. Or like just this sort of kid who just doesn't really want to fasten the helmet, on the
Yeah.
scooter, just like just like let it fly.
Just let it fly.
So as I'm sort of designing this thing, I'm trying not to create a parallel between this edge and this edge. I'm trying, it's all very fluid, until it's sort of set in, until the final idea, it's all like it can all move. It's really okay. It's just that it takes a lot of like trial and error,
Yeah.
drawing and erasing, and paying attention to symmetry also is like it's really important, especially like, well, there's really no, I mean, trees, I guess, would, like some
Yeah.
organic materials, it doesn't matter, but like anything, like animal, like they, like, or how to say, yeah, like people, animals, stuff like that, like features should be really symmetrical. Also, design are supposed to look, good and like well made, or should be really symmetrical. Like an orc's armor doesn't have to be symmetrical, but like a sort of Templar knight sort of guy should really show like an armor that's like expertly made and therefore perfectly symmetrical.
Yeah.
So shape wise, I think I'm okay. Like nothing screams like horrible design to me. Like things are not parallel. There's like different scales within the shape, different angles, no verticals, no horizontals, no right angles. So I'll just commit to like doing more like inside designs to it, and basically tie it in, like sort of establish a sort of more obvious visual link with the grave by adding this sort of lining here.
Yeah, so it's having that sort of design consistency, I guess, throughout the.
And maybe because it's going to be a little messy if I do this up there, I believe. I don't know, I guess it's sort of working. I was thinking maybe I could just leave this whole area like gilded, like this whole area here. Maybe it's okay. But I think both could work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's try to solve, like, keep going with this area here. So the same thing, like, let's try to simplify, like, the connection with the arm, like the armpit, I guess, or the sort of opening of the arm, in a way that sort of that follows what we've done already here, like, so using more dynamic lines, like sharper outlines, avoiding verticals, avoiding this essentially.
Yeah.
Working with the curves, like the work you've already done, working with the body, like the shapes of the body. And since we're seeing this side, I think, a nice line, like the sort of where the back plate and the front would connect, would be cool. A nice, connector sort of thing. I'm not sure if it's right, but either a hook or a strap, anything would be cool. Let's make the main shape first.
Yeah, mine has like buckles, like leather buckles on it, on the side.
All right. Well, let's see. I'll just I'll add this shape here, sort of like this sort of ornament here, the edge ornament, and then we'll see where we can put a strap to hopefully please your eye.
I don't know how historically accurate mine is, but I guess it would make sense.
Is there a specific, like, century where it's supposed to be from? Like, is it that accurate already?
I think mine is supposed to be like 18, but that sounds a bit wrong. Let me double check it.
18th century, that would be the 1700s.
Yeah,
a late.
That would be a very late one. That's why I was like, that doesn't sound right.
And yeah, let me see. So we could be like, of course, I kind of like those diagonals, by the way. So I think we could sort of inject them somehow. Maybe, yeah, something like this would be cool. Keeping it simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't find it anywhere now. I was looking through my emails to try and find the store that I bought it from, and I can't find it. But
very cool. Timbersite.
Oh yeah,
I see your explanation. Cool.
One IRL armor type. I like a Central Asian armor, especially Uzbek, and the such
Mhm.
that were cobbled together out of stuff they found on the Silk Road. Realistically, formalized armies would have uniform equipment. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this is about the time I can spend on this one, but like, yeah, try to, well, your anatomy is not like crazy, like it could be better. Like some things are like this arm is a little off, so that's
Mm,
more like just gesture drawing, like more like some fundamental skills. But design wise, if you can already fix like the your proportions of the character, yeah, using just repetition and using those sort of diagonals, like just like I did, trying to avoid perpendiculars, horizontals, verticals, and trying to go with something purposeful, something with like V's in it. And when you find a good like a good solution somewhere, it's try to replicate it elsewhere, and
mm,
you know usually you end up in a better place than when you started.
yeah.
Um, yeah, all right. I'll move on to this one, which is really cool. That's from Kendall, and yeah, so already like very creative. We have a lot of textures, layers, materials.
Hmm.
It's really neat.
Yeah.
I think the gesture is the anatomy could be, well, the anatomy, the gesture really of the character could be a little improved. Um, that's, I guess, design in a way, but it's not quite what I want to tackle today. Um, there's a like design is purpose, and it's like purposefulness, right? Design,
Yeah.
it's anything that you can sort of, with your reason, with like rational tools, sort of like improve to express a definite idea.
Hmm.
So gesture can of course be part of design, but I'd like to tackle more like costume. I think it's a bit more interesting. Um, so the lines of the costume, just working with the materials you have already, I think there's ways to make it more just pleasing or appealing to look at. Not that it's wrong, but like for example, we have like this character making a big like gesture, right? Like she's sort of invoking a spell or something, so she's raising her knee, her right knee, and so this could fly much more. Like we could create, like a lot of things are sort of parallel, and so we could create more like this sort of fanning or you know a bit more flow in things. It's not like necessarily that, like I'm not necessarily changing the design of the costume itself. It's more like the way it's arranged. It's part of design in a way because you sort of indicate that way how the costume can move. That's part of like what kind of shapes the character is going to see. It participates to it. So uh, let's just improve overall the flow. I like those folds here. It creates
Yeah.
little like kinks. Pretty cool. So I feel like those I forgot what they're called, but like anyway, this sort of overlapping of curves, like of opposite curves,
Mm.
it's a bit too regular. So let's try to make it more spontaneous. And even if the original pleating, I think it's called pleating,
Yeah.
even if the original pleating was like regular, like a kilt or something, for example, it could still fly and flow in a way that sort of disrupts that regularity. So let's try. Using like there's a lot of like lines that sort of are in a continuation with each other. Let's try to disrupt that using, again, like I'm gonna use like straight-ish, like kind of like a harsher approach to it,
Mm.
which then we can soften, um, but just to sort of get us away from like long repeating lines that sort of align with each other.
I do like the amount of sort of layers of clothing that are there. It's nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. So yeah, what sort of define the outline a bit more chaotically. I think it's creates the idea of movement and spontaneity. Like she seems like a spontaneous character who can make faces and stuff like that. So here we have kind of a, it's a bit too regular and parallel, that sort of area. So again, let's try to see if we can, like the back view is a bit more, you know, we have this sort of shape here. That's really nice. Let's try to indicate that. So I'm paying attention that this sort of loin like scarf here, it's sort of going here, I see. I'll make it go like under this first. So like the layers are not like neatly stacked up. There's a bit of, again, like a sort of chaos. And then let's make it fly. I'm gonna try to keep like all those pleats again, like there's a nice amount of pleats. I don't want to like smooth it out just for the sake of it. It'll be like simpler to be like, oh yeah, let's just do that. But let's try to actually make it work in the way that you've intended. And let's make them like pinch a little bit at the top.
So is that like having a bit more of like a visible movement in the fabric?
Right, essentially, yeah. And you see like you can create a more sort of gradient of detail, like towards that end, it's like smoother, like, you know, more of a line. And here it's more like zigzaggy.
Yeah.
Could be a cool sort of gradient. That's really cool. I'm okay with the way it works, that scarf. Really, really nice. What else? That's nice. So, all right, talking about like repetition, right? Like I'm trying, this is okay, it could work, but if we repeated it, like that sort of tight lacing elsewhere on the costume, if it's only on the wrist, for some reason it feels like she got it. I mean, maybe her costume is made of like pieces that come from all kinds of places. Maybe she's from the Silk Road, who knows? But it would be cool to see like that thing repeat, like at least an indication here. Maybe like lacing could be also here, just so it's not just one thing, like just a one-off accessory. Because just like I said, like for Joe, like as soon as you can repeat something, it just makes it look more normal, like it's supposed to be there. It sort of gives a cue of like what kind of culture it is. Like it's a subtle cue. It's like, yeah, like from our universe, like there's like talented craftspeople who can just do things really like minutely, you know, as opposed to like details that are more coarse from maybe a more cartoonish universe, or maybe from like a more barbaric universe where there's no such thing as like fine parallel stitching, stuff like that. So if it happens somewhere, let's make it happen elsewhere. But yeah, that's pretty much the only thing I thought, except maybe gesture, like to, you know, as you go on with your, you know, with your artistic journey, pay attention. You know, you will, I'm sure, because it's already really tight. But like it could be better, the gesture of it, of the character. But I thought needed a bit extra like chaos and coolness that could sort of reflect the personality of the character. It was just the way things flap and flow and overlap. Those layers could be a bit more, I don't know, chaotic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Awesome.
that's all I can spend on this. I'm sort of sprinting through these.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure. I want to make sure I get to Lilith.
Candle just said, "Thank you so much for the advice. I'll be sure to apply it whenever I can in the future."
Sure.
So, and previously Joe said, "Thank you so much for the feedback. It's helpful and encouraging to listen to as well." So,
my pleasure. I got it. Yeah. All right. So here it's interesting. We're like, it's very similar in a way to like what Laurent you had done here. So already like kind of daring proportions, very stylized, like big huge things, like small details. So it's overall it's looking great. It's a very appealing character already. The only thing that's I think could be improved overall, it's gesture drawing and like in a way that like ensures like the symmetry of the features. Because now like some things are a bit bigger. Like for example, his arm here is a little too small compared to the front arm. There could be perspective, at play, but overall I feel like his hand should not be this small if this one is so big. Just given the way the whole character sits in space, it feels slightly off. Also, like the way the volumes of the character could be also improved. So I think you don't have like a huge problem in terms of coming up with cool ideas and like drawing in a fun and confident way. I think you just need a bit more what's it called, like to be a bit more rigorous in general when you try to deal with space and volume and the symmetry of the features. So for example, here, let's actually make an opening for the arm so we can see a bit of the back, like, you know what I mean? That whole area is, I think, a little under represented. Just to make sure we see a bit of like the 3/4 view of the character. Like overall, that character is sort of facing slightly away from us. So let's make sure like we see a bit of the side of his torso. Again, same thing as before. Like with the other pieces, I'm going to use sort of straight-ish lines and diagonals mostly, and trying to vary the size and length and curvature of each of them. It's crazy how quickly time flies.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it only felt like we were sort of spending like 5 minutes on each one, but it's soon gone by.
Yeah. So let's go with that. That's fine here. Oh, thank you. Yes. Get my courses. They're good. I speak more, slowly and elaborately, like articulately than now. Now I'm just sort of whizzing through everything. But you'll get these tips and more. And they're pretty cheap.
Yeah, they are pretty cheap for the information that you're getting in them.
It's all stuff like that. It's like concise, realistic, like things you can use. It's not airy, gibberish.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
I stand by it.
Yeah, and you get them in like a little bundle as well. You save a little bit of money there too. So
True.
If you've enjoyed the topic of today's stream, then head on over to lunaracademy.co and check out the short course bundle, or you can get them individually if you like, but why not get them all at once?
Thank you for the plug.
You are very welcome.
So yeah, like hand gesture is a bit rough. That's mostly just practice, like sort of using reference, getting used to drawing hands. I think, for example, that thumb is a bit too like arched and kind of placed the wrong way. It could be a bit more angled like this. But what I'm looking at, like in terms of just the appeal of that overall design is okay. Like there's anatomy things here and there, but it's really the symmetry that's a bit off.
Mm-hmm.
Just to sum up and to repeat my earlier thought, so like that arm is really thick, like very like a powerful, strong arm. So let's try to make the same on the other side. To avoid any tangent, for example, between this and like the edge of between the belt and the edge of the arm, let's create a neat overlap, like once again, something where, like this, so there's a nice like stacking and layering of things.
Yeah.
No line just sort of merge into one and sort of confuse the viewer. As for repetition of design, you've done it already. Like I see a lot of like those swirls, those metallic swirls are repeated everywhere. That's really cool. It sort of makes everything feel like it gels together. That's really nice. Maybe one thing that's bugging me a little bit is this form here. It's a bit square. Like there's some right angles here and there. Like this is right in the middle of these two shapes. Let's see. It just takes a little bit of exaggeration. Nothing crazy. And maybe this could be moved up here. So we have like just it's not so even, like the sort of spreading of detail is not so even.
Yeah.
We have a nice like more restful area here. Same here, like this whole curve could be like the bigger shape, like that whole area here could be the bigger shape. And this could be a little smaller, like a little in here. I like how you alternated like convex and concave shapes already. That's nice. But yeah, make sure not to like make such a strong turn here. I think given the thickness of his shoulders, like something like this could be cooler, and you could create a nice little element that sticks out of the silhouette. Yeah, so I'm sorry that I sort of went a little quickly on the last one. I really have to get back to work, unfortunately. Like,
yeah,
my chat is just pinging on.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, but I mean, overall, anyway, that design was really successful in its style, like in what it's supposed to be. It's just like some things are not properly balanced in terms of like proportions from one side to the other.
Yeah.
And I hope this little paint over will also give you extra little hints at how to create more asymmetrical and more interesting designs here and there.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you so much, Arthur. It's been
my pleasure.
It's been a pleasure as always to have you come on and offer some sage advice, some sage wisdom. But, thank you so much. Thank you everybody as well who submitted pieces on our Discord. As I said, unfortunately we didn't have time to get around to all of them, but there's always more time in the future, so stick around. I will be back tomorrow, all things going well, with Alex P, so come along for that. He's been very busy recently, so touch wood, we'll be able to go ahead. But thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I will see you all tomorrow. So goodbye.
All right, thank you.